April is recognized as Donate Life Month, a time to bring awareness to the need of organ donations, but also honor those who have so generously donated an organ. I personally know someone who selflessly went through the process of donating his kidney when a friend was in need. And although the process can seem complex to make that decision, the person who is in need of an organ, their life depends on it. There are more than 100,000 people currently waiting for transplants in the U.S., according to the Donate Life America. And today we are joined by Tom O'Driscoll, a double altruistic organ donor. Welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
So,
Thank you.
Tom, right off the bat, how did you hear? What kind of gave you the idea? I think I want to donate an organ.
Well, believe it or not, it started with a program on NPR.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So if anyone can say that NPR changed their life, I can. It was a program on This American Life, and they had a story called The 10 Commandments. And for the 9th commandment, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not lie, they had a story of an Orthodox Jewish woman in Brooklyn named Chaya Lipschutz and how she wanted to donate one of her kidneys to a stranger in her community. But to do so, she felt she had to lie to her mother. She didn't want to tell her mother beforehand because she thought her mother would be upset and maybe not allow her to do it, that sort of thing. So she lied about it, broke the 9th commandment to do this mitzvah, which in Hebrew is a word that means a good deed, an action pleasing to God. The story was wonderful. It made me laugh, and it was just a wonderful story, and it really stuck with me. And Chaya has basically devoted her life to encouraging people to be organ donors. She has a website called Kidney Mitzvah, and I reached out to her through that website. We started a conversation. She educated me terrifically about how to go about it and what it means. And in 2010, I donated my left kidney to a stranger.
Wow.
You know, what's interesting in that is people love the idea of organ donation, but there's a disparity for those who support the idea and those who actually do it. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that disparity exists?
Wow, that's a great question. It's really fascinating. There is a researcher at Georgetown who believes that the reason why we do altruistic things is because of our amygdala. And if you have a highly developed amygdala in your brain, you're very empathetic to people. If you have a diseased amygdala, you might be a sociopath.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
I always heard that to be an organ donor is humane. Not to want to be an organ donor is human. That's the difference. Yeah. But there are people who are like, well, it's a great idea, but gosh, I want to be buried in whole. And in fact, there's some religions that believe you should be buried in whole.
Right. No, that's very true. I'm Catholic, and I know Pope Francis has said that donating an organ is an act of love for a neighbor. And I think everyone would agree with that.
I agree with that.
But you're a double altruistic organ donor. So when we say double, let's talk about
what else are you missing? Do you got anything I can use?
I'm spent. I'm all done. No, but it's fascinating. I stayed good friends with Chaya. In fact, I spoke with her just 2 nights ago, and her NPR program is going to be repeated on This American Life shortly. She was very excited. She was telling me about that. But about 10 years ago, I started to notice on her website that she talked about not only kidney donation, but kidney and liver donation. And I spoke to her and I said, you can't donate a liver.
No.
You die without a liver. She educated me and said the liver is unique among our internal organs in that it has the ability to regenerate. And so a healthy adult can donate up to 65% of their liver. And within 2 months, that liver is back to normal size and doing its function.
Really?
The human body is amazing in that regard. It's like a starfish arm. It regrows.
Yeah, the prostate could do that too. Although nobody wants mine, I can assure you that. So let's talk about opt-in versus opt-out, because we're an opt-in country. You have to opt in to be a donor, whereas a lot of countries are opt out. You're automatically considered to be a donor. In fact, it's on your driver's license if you don't want to be a donor. right? I mean, otherwise you're a donor.
Right.
So a lot of countries have the opt-out program. So why are we not that country where we're automatically a donor?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I know from a personal standpoint, I think I like the idea of opting in. And right now, about 60% of all Americans do opt in to be organ donors. But there's something that's very, very interesting about that. End of life, organ donations come in two forms, end of life and living. End of life donations will never solve the organ crisis. There will never be enough of them.
Is it because you have to harvest them so quickly?
The reason is, and not to put too fine a point on it, you have to die in a very particular way, and that just doesn't happen enough. So even if 100% of all Americans were end-of-life donors, we would not make a dent in getting organs to those 100,000 Americans that need them.
But I mean, to our earlier point, I mean, if you're talking about a heart or a lot of organs, it has to be an end-of-life donation.
Sure. Yes.
So that's really the only choice.
Can't give your heart before
Well,
you're
but
ready.
I remember when the AIDS crisis was at its peak. There was there were people who were getting organs from people who didn't know they had HIV, and they were getting HIV because of that organ. But that's been solved.
Right. No one donates an organ without being extensively tested. There are about 250 hospitals in the United States that perform transplants. All of them run their own programs of testing someone to be a living organ donor. And this is very interesting. In addition to getting tons of screens and blood tests and all that sort of thing, what other type of doctor do you see if you want to be a living organ donor?
Eye doctor?
Psychiatrist.
Oh, well. Yeah, that's a good doctor.
They will have a psychiatrist interview you and say, tell us why you want to do this, and make sure that it's for the right reasons.
Do they check back with like members of your family? I mean, like if I wanted to do it, would they ask my husband, "Is this okay with you?"
They did not in my case. No one contacted any of my family, which was good because unlike Chaya, I didn't lie to my family, but I didn't tell them that I was going to be
Oh,
interesting.
And we want to remind everybody, you're listening to Hello Houston. We're speaking with Tom O'Driscoll, who's a double altruistic organ donor. And you can always join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
Tom, technology is all around us, yet whenever I think of organ donations, I'm still seeing those igloo coolers. Have we advanced in portable organ preservation devices, or are we still just throwing them in with the ice and moving them in a cooler?
Yeah, my understanding is that's pretty much how they're transported.
That blows my mind.
It is. It really is amazing. You talk about technology, Ernie, and one of the things to keep in mind, and we've heard a lot about it, NPR has had stories on us, of xenotransplantation. Animal organs, specifically pig organs that have been bred for kidney donors. And my understanding, I'm not an expert on this by any means, is that it will always be kind of a middle step. Someone goes into kidney failure, they go on dialysis. Dialysis keeps them alive, but it's very, very hard on their body. My kidney recipient told me that after she would have a dialysis treatment, she felt like she'd run a marathon. Just wipes her out. It is not hyperbole to say that dialysis centers are temples of despair. It's a very, very hard life to be on dialysis. Xenotransplantation, an animal organ, will never be as good as a human kidney. And my understanding is there's a difference because of blood pressure and how long the organ will last. A living organ donation lasts twice as long as a deceased organ donation for obvious reasons. When I donated my kidney to my recipient, I actually asked the surgeon to take a photo of it. And at that time, there weren't iPhones, so he just gave me later a copy of the photo. When I went to see my recipient in the hospital, her nurse looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh, what a beautiful organ." Oh, nice. And I thought she was being funny. And she said, no. She said, "I used to be an operating room nurse, and I could tell that that's a living organ because it's pink, it's healthy looking. You get a deceased organ that comes in, it does not look the same. And that's why living organ donor, someone with a living organ donation can use that organ twice as long as a deceased organ.
Sometimes you hear about people getting another person's organ and they take on those characteristics of that person. Like, oh, no, I love the color blue. I never liked the color blue until I got your kidney.
Is there any truth to that?
Any truth to that in your case?
Not in my experience.
Not in your experience?
Not in my experience.
Tom, where is the greatest need when it comes to organ donation?
Definitely in the area of kidneys. And as you said, Celeste, there's about 100,000 Americans on the organ waiting list. About 90,000 of those are for kidneys. And I'm part of an organization that we're trying to address that problem with a piece of legislation that has recently been introduced into the House Ways and Means Committee, H.R. 2678, called the End Kidney Deaths Act. And basically what we're trying to do, it's not without controversy, is to compensate someone for donating their kidney to a stranger through a refundable tax credit that they can take in sums over 5 years. There is one country in the world where you can legally sell your kidney. Do y'all know what country that might be?
No. I don't even want to guess.
I know.
Of all places, it's Iran. You can legally sell your kidney in Iran. What is their wait list for a kidney in Iran?
Oh, Lord, 200,000? Zero.
Zero.
Because people are
zero.
motivated.
Yeah.
Can we here sell our kidneys to Iran?
Absolutely not. So each
curious.
donation that I did, I had to sign something saying I'm not receiving any valuable consideration for my organ.
The movie Como, remember Como?
Yeah, exactly. But what we're trying to do through the End Kidney Deaths Act is to create a means by which you would encourage more donation, but do it in a non-exploitative way. And we think a refundable 5-year tax credit is exactly the way to do that.
We're having a fascinating conversation here about organ donation. We'd love to hear what you think at 713-440-8870. We have Michael on the line from Galleria. Michael, what are you thinking about all this?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having this conversation. It's so vital and important. I'm privileged that 10 years and nearly 5 months ago, I received a liver donation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you?
So I think about it every day, sometimes several times a day. I'm a Vietnam vet, and many of us came home with hepatitis C. And over the years, obviously, the virus impacted my liver, but I'm fortunate to have lived in Houston, where we have such great access to medical care.
Nice.
Michael, great story, and thanks for sharing with us. If you have a comment and you want to share, 713-440-8870. Okay, bioengineering. What about growing organs for this? Where are we in all of that?
Yeah, I know very little about that. And with all those type of things, xenotransplantation, bioengineering, you always hear the same number. 10 years out, we'll be doing it. And then 10 years go by.
Right,
10 years out, we'll be doing it. And it seems to be getting much closer with making xenotransplantation a real thing. But again, it's never going to be as good as a living organ donation. It can't be.
No. I mean, you can make things with a 3D printer. We had a guest that in high school was making prosthetics with a 3D printer.
Right.
But you really can't make an organ.
Yeah.
At least not yet.
I also am curious about demographic inequalities in this, from who gives and who receives. Is it the rich get richer and the poor get poorer in this area?
There's no doubt about it that the people who get an organ are typically more affluent than people who don't. And it's very, very sad in that regard.
But could it be the more affluent, as uncomfortable as they are,
why?
healthier, have had better medical care, so they are a better odds of doing well from being a recipient?
I think that's a fair point. It is interesting to note, though, 2 years ago, Representative Donald Payne, a Democratic member of Congress from New Jersey, he died on the kidney waiting list. This is a member of the House of Representatives, and he died waiting for a kidney. He was going to be, in fact, one of our co-sponsors of the End Kidney Deaths Act. So it can happen to someone who is powerful. It can happen to someone who has no power at all.
Is it a blind list? So you don't know who's in need. You just know physically they are most able to continue a longer life if they get this organ.
That's exactly right. So there is an organization called UNOS, United Network for Organ Sharing, and they manage what's called the OPTIN, Organ Procurement and Transportation Network in the United States, and they maintain the lists. And people get on the list, and your number whatever, and your number this. But I've forgotten now. The average wait is years for a kidney.
We have about 30 seconds. If you want to get on the list, where do you go?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about being a living organ donor, I'd say the first place to go to is Donate Life America. Their website has wonderful information about doing that. If you want to speak with someone who's done it, look me up on Facebook. I'm the only Tom O'Driscoll from Sugar Land, Texas. I would be very happy to speak with anyone that would want to be a donor.
Thank you, Tom.